chat all things film, and this week we are jazzed to talk about Mulan, the newest Disney remake, question mark on excitement. I don't know. We'll get into it. It should be an interesting discussion. But before we can jump into our movie discussion for this week, let me introduce you to those other husky, hairy, huggable hobos I mentioned. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show. Hey, sweetheart, how are you?
Here, I'm doing good. I hope everyone else is doing good. And welcome to the podcast, everybody.
Well, glad you're doing good. Glad to have you here with us, sweetheart. Will Lindis is with us as well. How the hell are you, Will?
Hey, I'm doing great, Brad. I got up this morning and thought, man, I cannot wait to talk about one of my favorite fast-talking dragons in all of movie history. So I'm really excited that we're going to dive into to that in today's film.
Oh,
okay. Wait, did I watch the wrong one?
I think maybe you might have. I know you actually really watched the real one.
Yeah.
The fast-talking dragon genre. I forgot all about that.
Right? Oh, goodness. Well, it should be a great discussion this week. We've already got a few folks with us on the live chat. Hamstrap says, howdy, y'all. Hey, good to see you.
Howdy, Ham.
Welcome. Good to see you, as always. And Mary Meadows. Hey, Mary. Welcome. So glad to see you as well. Glad you could join us. She says, yes.
Yes. We even made Will dress up for this one.
Yeah, I did.
That's right.
Wear a shirt.
I'm
Jury's still out on pants.
I think I know whether there's pants or not. Anyway, hey, look, movie discussion. So we're going to talk about Disney's newest remake of their own content, Mulan. And of course, similar to our other reviews on the 377 previous episodes of the show, we're going to talk about Mulan spoiler-free for probably 10 or 15 minutes. If you haven't seen it yet, we will protect your virginal innocence where the film is concerned. And then we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, don't worry, you can hang around at least for a little while. Or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, however you access our show, and we appreciate that you do, you can jump around using the time index in the show notes as appropriate. We're going to get our movie discussion going here very shortly. But Josh Yoshi Sturgis says, hey, guys. Hello, handsome Josh.
Oh. Hey, Josh.
Welcome, Josh.
And Will, just to let you know, Mary says no pants required. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Then I have cleared the bar for the dress code for this episode.
Keep those cameras in the friendly zone from the from the nipples up.
No, real talk though, Texas dropped down from like the hundreds to like the high 70s this week. So I'm wearing long, like flannel pants right now because this is cold. Like, when you're used to like, 100, 105, just like melting your balls off every time you go outside. So, yeah.
It's cold, baby. Getting in a blanket.
We're getting these stories. Everybody's dropping. I saw pictures of snow in Colorado today.
What?
From friends. Yeah, snow in Colorado and Denver. Cold in Texas now after a giant heat wave all year. But here, I mean, our temperatures have moderated out to like a cool 90. So I guess that's not so bad for Arizona.
Josh says up in Phoenix, it's still 100. Josh, I guess that's one benefit of being an hour and 45 minutes south in Tucson. We're a little bit cooler than Phoenix.
Yeah, we're only 92, right?
But I sure am looking forward. I mean, pumpkin spice season has officially begun. I'm looking forward to having appropriate temperatures in Arizona for that. High 80s instead of high 90s.
One of my friends up north was telling me about like, yeah, I know it's snowing right now, but I'm getting the hot tub ready. And all I could think was just like, you lucky son of a bitch. Like, why can't I have cold weather and hot tub. Like, just that sounds like the perfect combination for exactly right now.
Well, Hamstrak says it's snowing in Colorado Springs right now. So Hammy, we're a little bit jealous of you. Just FYI.
How'd you like to go from worrying about whether your air conditioner is going to be able to keep you, comfortable on the ride to the grocery store, versus, and then the next day, like scraping your windshield from ice? That's kind of crazy.
Pretty crazy indeed. Well, I think we have a lot of folks who are waiting for our Mulan discussion to kick off. Jim, Will, are you feeling ready to dig into this one?
Yeah, let's see what our reflection has to show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing I said. That's the second.
We'll find out if this movie made men of us.
Let's be true to ourselves first and see what we can make of this movie. Right.
Let's see if we can put on a show worth fighting for.
I promise to bring honor to us all. All right. Here we go. Our discussion of Disney's Mulan. All right. So, Jim, for anybody, who may be new to this whole Mulan thing, give us a brief setup of this. Give us a brief setup of this film, if you don't mind, and your thoughts. Was this worth a $30 rental fee on top of the Disney Plus subscription?
So, sure, we can get into that. Definitely, that's a point worth discussing as well. But let's talk about the film itself first. This is Disney's remake of their 1998 animated version of Mulan, that is beloved by some and some on the show, I'm sure. This is their 17th live action remake of one of their own movies, believe it or not. 17. Somebody online, of course, there's lists online for everything. So this is the 17th remake of one of their films, and I've been pretty it's been a mixed bag, let's put it that way, on the remakes. I think I've mostly come down negative on their remakes because they just tend to, they have a high bar to clear when it comes to satisfying me, because I've seen the originals, and in my mind sometimes the original is hard to topple. And we'll get into all that too. But let me give you the synopsis for the movie in case anybody doesn't know what Mulan is about. It's about a fearless young woman in Imperial China who disguises herself as a man to enlist as a soldier in her ailing father's place to battle northern invaders. So that is the basic premise of Mulan. Brad and I actually got to watch this twice over the weekend, which was pretty cool. And so here's the thing. As I said before, it's been a mixed bag on whether I've liked these Disney live action remakes. And this one here, I actually liked it. I actually liked it. They made some interesting choices, some of which maybe I don't fully agree with. But I think this one stands out. They didn't make they didn't try to copy the original one kind of note for note, kind of like the Lion King did, right? With its, if you remember that remake, that was an actual like shot for shot remake. This one is different. They mix things up here. They do some things different in live action than they did in animation. And I actually enjoyed it all the way through. I did not, even though I do love like this one here, for you folks that don't know, this one is kind of devoid of songs. It doesn't really fall on the musical side at all. Of course, it has a score, but it doesn't have any singing or, things that would make it a musical. So it doesn't have that. Did I like the songs from the original? Yes, I love some of the songs from the original. Did I miss them here? Not really, because I think the tone of this film is this is a much darker version of Mulan than you're going to see in that animated. I mean, this is probably as dark as I've seen Disney get with any of their films including their remakes. I think they're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, and we'll get into that when it comes to action scenes and what it depicts in this film. But yeah, I guess I like it. We'll talk about the $30 charge on top of the Disney Plus subscription charge to buy this one, because I think that's probably going to keep a lot of people maybe from seeing this at least right away, until something different happens. Maybe in the future, Mulan, they'll lower the price or offer it as part of their regular subscription service. I don't know. After they've squeezed every freaking dollar they can out of it, they might allow it to be seen on their regular service, which is not cheap either, of course. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think that might be a detractor for some people to pay the extra $30. And is it worth paying $30 to see? Well, if it's a movie that you would have gone to the movie theater to see anyway, then yeah, I think the $30 is not really going to be much more than you would have paid probably to all in all to go see this movie in theaters. So if you would have watched it in theaters and you think it's something you would enjoy because you love the original and you're interested, I think it's worth the $30 to see.
All right. Well, sounds like this is a plus column film for Jim. Thanks so much for weighing in on that. Appreciate that. Will, how about for you?
So the price point is sort of a thing that I look at in isolation, because I think that, yes, like I would have definitely spent more than $30 to go see this in theaters, because not only do you count in the ticket prices, and this would have been for two people, let alone like a family of four or more, that would all be watching it at their home. But I would have paid for the popcorn, I would have paid for the soda, and I would have paid for the candy, and I would have paid for in my case, I would have paid for the buffalo cauliflower and the fried tofu sandwich. Which are kind of my staples, or were my staples in the time before. So I would have easily dropped tickets and everything together $60+ on this. So that said, I don't want to overly normalize the idea of hey, capitalism. Let's capitalism a little bit more, especially for a company that already has all of the money in the world. So I'm very torn on the whole thing. But right now we're doing what we can and we're making the best decisions that we can. As far as the film's concerned, I have not liked any of the live action movies, really. Like, the best that I've been able to do is come away from some of them and say, I appreciated that they maybe tried this, but for the most part, I feel that the films, all of them, suffer so much because they try to both milk the nostalgia of what the old thing was while not really stepping outside of the box of it. So it makes the films rather pointless in the grand scheme of things. So I was appreciative watching Mulan of the things that I feel veered furthest away from the source material. In this case, we have a movie that said, okay, let's strip out the songs, which in some ways I miss the songs. I like the songs, but I like the fact that this film said, let's do our own thing. I like the idea that they decided to veer into making this more of like a wuxia style film, which is, sort of like the highly acrobatic Chinese hero martial arts films, lots of like wires and things like that. Most popularized through like the stuff from like the Shaw Brothers or like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or like Jet Li's Hero and things like that. My problem with this film is that it did not, just like the others, it did not do enough of that. I think that what this film really needed to do was to pick a lane and stay in it. And in this case, it got its foot in like the wuxia pool. It needed to just dive its whole body in there. It needed to kind of go all out with the acrobatics. It needed to just really make a lot of things just more exciting and more fun. As it is, this is my favorite of the Disney live action movies. I had a good time watching it. I enjoyed the experience. I thought the performances were great. I thought again, some of the martial arts things they chose, the costumes were pretty neat. Some of the set pieces were fun to look at. And that was all great. But I also come back to the fact of, as much as I enjoyed this, it's still in the same boat of like, I don't know why I would watch this one when I could just watch the other version that of itself that Disney's trying to photocopy. And I think that's the problem I've had with all of these, maybe except for like the Maleficent ones, but those aren't really remakes. Those are just like kind of sequels. So I give this one a yes. I give this one a pass. Like, several of the Disney remakes have made my worst movie of the year list. And this one, I'm saying I had a fun time watching. So already, I'm feeling pretty good about this. But at the same time, like, what am I talking? Like maybe a 3 out of 5 star type thing. Like, I enjoyed the experience, but it didn't set my world on fire. So I don't know what to really make of all of this. It's the best of a bad bunch. I put that on the poster. I don't know.
Well, sounds like you were definitely more positive on this one than you have been on some of the other Disney remake films of the past, Will. So maybe this tripped something for you, at least. I guess we're 2 ? 1.5 in the positive column. But definitely can understand where you're coming from, Will. This is a bit of a troubled film, I think. Starting with the price point, I absolutely agree with you folks. If you're going to see it in the movie theater anyway, you're going to spend that money, right? Even if you just go by yourself and buy the, concessions you would normally buy, you'd probably still pay about $30. Hamstrak makes a good point in the chat, though. He says, seems odd to pay a subscription for the privilege to buy a movie. Can you buy it without a Disney Plus subscription? To my knowledge, I don't think you can. So I think you'd have to... Yeah, you'd have to get a Disney Plus subscription if you don't already have one, right, then pay the money on top of that. So maybe that heightens that bar as well. But I think that's something everyone has to decide for themselves. That said, a friend of mine who has little ones at home, they've watched Mulan 9.5 times since Friday.
Huh.
It's the Scoob effect all over again, right?
It really is, and it's changing the model, and I think that's a whole nother discussion that we could have. But like, if you're a mom of 2 little kids, like, you're not going to go see this movie in theaters 9.5 times, before it comes out on home video or whatnot. So, maybe it's changing the landscape a little. You pay your money, you get to watch it all you want. I suppose it depends on, are you a rewatcher? Do you have a family or not? But we were going to see this in theaters anyway when it was supposed to come out in March, before all the craziness happened. So for me, I would say it's definitely worth that fee. As far as the film itself goes, I have generally been much more positive on the Disney remakes, I think, than you guys have. The remake of Lion King was one of my favorite films of last year, or whatever year it came out in, 2018 maybe? I don't even remember. So going into these remakes, I think I tend to have just a more positive outlook about them. Not saying you guys don't necessarily, but seeing this film hurt my heart a little bit.
Aww.
And when we talk about spoilers, I can more freely discuss some of these things, but I feel like the central premise of this film completely changes the Mulan character and removes so much of like what made her special. And for me, like, that's where the magic of the first film came from. So was it visually interesting to watch? Yeah, totally. Was it fun? Sure. Do I wish this was a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon movie instead of a Disney Mulan movie? Yes, I do. Because I feel like if you could kind of separate those things out, at least for me, it would make, I guess, for a better experience. So I appreciate that they tried to do something different. I love the songs from the original. I like that they included some like musical motifs, even if we didn't have the full outright songs. Some of them are in the trailer, so I don't think that's spoiling. A lot of people are like, man, they removed, the fast talking dragon. Like, ugh, like, not my Mulan. I appreciated the intention to ground this Mulan more into realism. I think that was our understanding going into the film. I would say they just swapped out some, fantasism for other fantasism. And that has me scratching my head a little bit. So I'm forward to chatting about that with you guys. But this one's kind of a letdown for me. But I would still, I guess, put it in the positive-ish column. I mean, what the fuck else are you going to watch right now? Oh, sorry. I hope you're not watching this with your kids after watching Mulan. I just dropped an F-bomb. But I would say,
as we do,
I would say I'm probably the least positive of this film, based at least on what I've heard so far.
Yeah, and nothing hurts my heart more than to like watch, sit there with you and watch a property that I know is like, something you really care about and you really loved, and then get to the end of it and say, what did you think of it? And then have you go, oh my God, I wish they hadn't done this. And it's just that was a little bit sad. But Will, I get your point as far as like maybe they didn't go far enough with some of the way they wanted to kind of remake or rework this thing, and make it a full on kind of martial arts kind of movie, which is cool. I just don't see Disney doing that. You know what I mean? We got to remember we're dealing with Disney. They've got the whole. This is kind of okay. We'll reflavor it and redesign it by committee, like kind of thing. So they had to do certain things, unfortunately, and I think they were kind of up against the stops. Like I said before, I think this is probably the edgiest film that they've done in their remake series, of their remakes. Right. So maybe they're pushing that envelope out, but I don't think they could jump over the line with this one.
Well, it all comes down to a problem with the core philosophy of remaking these films the way that they do. If you think about the animated films that we've seen, those are all retellings of a classic story. And a lot of times they draw from previous adaptations outside of Disney. Beauty and the Beast the animated Beauty and the Beast was not just directly the folk tale. It drew from several of the film adaptations before. But when Disney put that into the mix and made it their own thing, that was Disney's version of it. Same with all of these. Well, what we've got here is these live action movies. This was not a remaking of this. This was not a retelling of the story of Mulan. This was a retelling of Disney's Mulan. And so they've processed it into a thing that then processes it into another thing. They have to protect the brand. They have you have, in addition to all of the rides at the theme parks, which are somehow still open, are being shifted to being representative of the films. The princess line has become increasingly popular in terms of merchandising with young girls. And so any of these films that they make has to protect those IPs. And so the area that they have to play around it is not great. And again, I think that we could review 17 more of these, and the review might be very similar in a lot of ways until they sort of fix that core problem. Doing these films the way they are always going to be pale imitations of the original.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait to get into spoilers with you guys, because there's a lot. I think there's a lot here to talk about.
And some good things. There's some good things.
Yeah, absolutely some good things. And I think it now, for me at least, is probably a good time to make that switch, because I think there's a lot we want to dive into, and we're kind of holding ourselves back a little bit. Real quick though, Hamsuck says, would the price point affect what you think of a movie, Mulan or any other movie? Or would it be more forgiving if this was released for free or on Netflix? For me personally, I divest the quality of the movie from the price point. Like, I didn't like The Hunt that much, but I got to see a new movie in our house. It was totally worth it for me. Same thing here with Mulan. I didn't like it as much as you guys did, but I'm still glad we got to see it. Right. So that's my thinking. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't heap those expectations on a movie. I don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, you're studio wants 30 more bucks from my pot. You better be worth that 30 bucks. I mean, yeah, we talk about up front, like, okay, we're going to talk about, was this movie worth spending the $30? But I don't necessarily put those expectations on it. I mean, when we see a movie, we decide if we're going to spend the money or not. We do it, and then we enjoy the movie or we don't. To me, they're two separate things. So no, I don't put that on there.
I do think of it from the perspective of, we are three people who are used to spending probably more money at the theaters than kind of the average bear, so to speak, because not just because of the show, but because I think that even if we weren't doing reviews, I think film viewing and discussing films is very much a hobby for us, and a hobby that we're invested in. So because of that, the price point is less a sticking point for me personally. And I'm with you, Brad. Like, I try to look at every film as its own thing, and not in terms of like the price I spent for it. But if there are people who do have that, I mean, at the end of the day, films are not solely artistic works. They're also commercial products. And if the price point of someone's commercial product influences how they experienced and interacted with that commercial product, I can't begrudge them that.
All right. Well, Hammy, you just got 5 minutes of answer for your question. I hope that's helpful. But we're going to go ahead and open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't yet seen Disney's remake of Mulan, now is your chance to step away for probably about 25 minutes or so. If you want to come back at the end for plugs, please do. Or if you're listening through digital tape delay, feel free to skip ahead with the time index in the show notes. But spoilers are officially fair game. And we have a question in the live chat from a really good friend of mine that I went to college with. Hey, Derek Wallbank. He says, okay, talk me through your thoughts on the controversy with the movie. I ask because in Hong Kong, it's a massive topic. Really throughout Asia, we hear a lot about it. And he's wondering if that's filtering through to America. And by controversy, I assume that's in regard to the movie filming near a reported prison camp in China. What do you guys think about that whole thing?
Let me go first. We'll get right to the
go for it, Jim. So this, the Band-Aid.
This has more to do with how the film is being received culturally, right? In the world, than what happens on the screen, because I don't think there's any controversy necessarily. We'll get into it, but I don't know if there's a controversy with what happens on the screen per se, how the movie's portrayals of characters or anything. But I'm no expert on this issue in Hong Kong. Here's what I heard though. Some of it is bleeding into the U.S. I don't know if I may even have friends who have boycotted this movie because of their political leanings and thoughts, and that may be true. And if they do, then that's fine on them, and that's their choice to make, right? But what I heard was there were some things said by the lead actor in this, I think, early on, that kind of took sides, let's just say that, in conflict that's happening, a big conflict that's happening in Hong Kong. I'm not going to get into more about the details because I just don't know. But I did hear that, and I heard that was I think the first thing I heard about the boycott Mulan movement. And then I just recently heard that they were filming in some of the provinces that were affected by violence and things happening in China. And so those choices to film in those areas came under scrutiny by certain members of certain facets of the public. And that's what I heard. I don't think I knew enough or was invested enough in any of that for it to influence my view on the film. But that may not be the case for everybody. So I'm going to let others talk about it right now.
Well, I think there's a pretty good point made in the question itself about wondering if it's filtering through to America. And I'll say that the information that has filtered through to me, aside from what I've actually gone out of my way to look into, has been in sort of like fits and spurts. Like, I don't think that it's truly filtering through in a way. And there's a lot of that falls under, I don't think that we are, I guess this is maybe a different soapbox issue, but I don't think we're all that great here necessarily about fully recognizing like human rights abuses on foreign soil. I think we are pretty good at sort of burying our heads in the sand and just saying like, well, it doesn't affect me personally. And when I say collective we, I'm not meaning like three of us here, we, you know, big broad arms across all of us in this nation of ours. So there's a couple of different issues here. The area itself and the regime that's there have been accused, and it's of some pretty heinous human rights abuses. The lead actress did go on record supporting kind of the local police, which caused an additional bit of fuel on that particular fire, because it wasn't just, okay, big corporation filmed in this area and thanked. You can kind of, if you pull back enough, you can sort of just say, well, Disney's going to Disney or whatever. But when the lead actress gets involved personally, it does change the color of the whole thing. I don't know. The whole thing has been pretty gross, all things considered. I think that when we talk about things that impact our willingness to consume the particular media, I would everyone's going to make the decision they're going to make. But I think that me personally, I maybe put a little more weight, even more towards this than whether or not it's like on a streaming platform for rent or purchase or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think, Derek, your question about how much is getting through here. I mean, until really yesterday, I think I hadn't really heard much about the controversy, or controversies, plural, right? I started seeing some stuff on Reddit, of all places, imagine that. Then Jim, you mentioned, the issue with the comments from the lead actress, and it's all kind of, unspooled from there. I'm curious from your perspective, Derek, and feel free to let us know in the chat, how much is this being talked about? How long has it been talked about? Because now I'm curious sort of how, I guess, veneered we are over on this side of the pond from this stuff. But definitely some problematic factors, I think, here. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little more about the film itself. Folks, Jim, Will, you had mentioned that there were some things you really enjoyed about this. From a story perspective, Jim, did you feel like this worked better as like a Disney war film versus like a, animated, happy film from the 90s?
No, I just liked, I did like the same message that kind of the first film had, which is kind of be true to yourself. This is obviously we've seen it a million times. This is obviously a coming of age film, but from a, more of a female perspective, right? And also from, a Chinese person's perspective. And we don't get to see that a lot in film, right? So those things I enjoyed. I loved the way this movie was shot. I thought it looked wonderful. I thought, like I said, this was a beautiful movie to look at. The slow motion scenes, the landscapes, how they filmed the action, I thought was really, really well done. I don't think they overdid any action stuff. My only problem with the action was it's Disney action, right? So you have soldiers going to war, hacking and slashing each other with deadly weapons, and I think in a movie you might see one drop of blood. coming off somebody's hand at one point in the movie. So you're scratching your head like, come on, guys, this action is too good for you to just get to the 90, get to the half a foot line on the field and not score a touchdown by. But I know it's Disney, and that's what I was talking about earlier. They kind of pushed it right up to the line, and they couldn't go any further. Mary asked a question earlier, and I wanted to get back to this. She asked a question that she said, from what she understands, the dragon wasn't. So the dragon was not really in this movie, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Mushu the dragon, did not appear in this movie. And she says it wasn't culturally appropriate. I assume she's talking about in the initial Mulan, right? Because you have Eddie Murphy, who's an African-American actor, voicing a dragon. Now, I don't know what cultural appropriateness is for a dragon, but I don't know if that's what she's talking about. Maybe I'm totally getting the question wrong.
I think it's not just Eddie Murphy himself there. I think it's the way the character was portrayed as part of like Chinese culture, like the dragons, like, power, strength, those types of things. And having it cast as kind of like the wisecracking sidekick felt disrespectful. At least that's some of, I'm not of that culture, but that's a lot of the things that I've seen and read that's part of why they said, this wasn't presenting, the right picture. Now,
you mean like right after Eddie Murphy recorded the donkey from Shrek, they just kept him in the studio and said, hey, record these lines for a dragon in another movie we're doing, because it's basically the same character. Yeah.
Well, to be fair though, Shrek came in 2001. Mulan was 98.
Yeah,
so
it's the other way around.
It's the other way around. Get it straight.
Okay.
And nothing against Eddie Murphy. Like, I think that he, as a voice actor, I mean, as a performer, he's great. But like, as a voice actor, I think that he's created some really, really fun characters. And I think that there is a reason why Mushu is so well respected and well loved amongst people who are kind of fans of the Disney animated movie and who maybe grew up with that character. But at the same time, I can also see why that's an okay one to sort of leave where it was and to sort of do something else and different with this new one.
Yeah, and I would say even from the standpoint of just paring things down, I think it's kind of a smart choice. We get rid of Mushu, we get rid of all the stuff with the cricket. Like, it becomes much more about Mulan herself as a character and the people she interacts with, right, rather than stealing away from that. Now, I think there's some problematicness with this Mulan character, but at least it puts her more center focus, which I did appreciate.
Yeah, I'll tell you what else I liked that they added was the actor Donnie Yen, who I'm a big fan of, who plays the commander. I forget what his name is. Commander Tong. I loved his character in this. He got, the relationship that he and Mulan had through the movie, I thought was really good, because I think there's an arc in the movie of their relationship where they develop an understanding of each other, based on, ancestral stuff and, maybe similarities in their personalities. But I thought that was really well done. And we really didn't get that in the, of course you didn't get that in the animated movie, because they focused on a lot of other things.
Yeah. I did like, and mainly because it didn't overtake too many elements of the film, it was a fun way to do a wink and a nod to something without disrupting things. I liked that one of the friends in her regimen was named Cricket, which was a reference to the little cricket character from the first one. I thought that was a cute way to do that without having like a anthropomorphic cricket kind of bouncing around and doing things. That's not the type of movie this was, but you could still nod to it. And that character did not upset the balance of the film. Gosh, I love the costuming so much. I loved some of the way the fight sequences worked. Like I really liked some of the stuff around the snow battlefield. I liked seeing some of like there were some cool moves where people would do like a kind of a flip and like kick a spear, kick an arrow. And that is like straight out of like the wuxia style, like playbook. And I love that stuff. The problem is, I guess I'm going straight from a compliment to a backhanded insult, but a knock. But the problem is that I keep thinking about this story about this. This is a woman who's told that she can't. This is the story of a woman who's told that she can't, but she's super freaking capable and she can. But the problem is, the moral of this story is, look, if you're exceptional, if you are the best of the best, even that's not really going to be enough. But if you use that exceptionalism to protect the status quo, then you get to be the one and only exception. And that's what she did. If you think about it, this film was not about overturning some of these very patriarchal things. It was about one person being made an exception of because she was the best of the best and was so good that they couldn't possibly say no to her. Which, to be fair, that is the Mulan story. But at the same time, if we're doing a new adaptation, we're doing a new story, they could have rounded off some of those edges, or hell, done something ballsier with it. I don't know, but
yeah, and I feel like it's even more egregious than that, because Jim knows what's coming. In the animated film, I've only been talking about it for 5 days now. In the animated film, Mulan is able to become as amazing as she is because she works hard and she's smart and she's clever. In this film, she becomes amazing because she decides to embrace her true self and gains access to the chi, which basically is, I guess, like the Force. And using her magic powers, she can kick arrows straight into a man's heart. She can, kick spears. She can levitate, jump over things. She can teleport behind enemy lines and get them to fire a trebuchet at her. And I feel like it makes the message less about like, hey, a woman can be just as capable as a man and be powerful and be amazing, and makes it more like, again, as long as you're the special chosen one, you can accomplish wonderful things. And I think that's unfortunate. Friends of mine in high school who are women and felt disempowered, back in those years, really latched onto Mulan because of that message. They're watching this version of Mulan and they're like, God, I'm glad I didn't see that when I was a kid, or I probably never would have went into aerospace engineering. So I don't know.
Well, and I think that there's the other thing that's very frustrating about it is that you can also look at it from the other perspective and say, maybe we want to make that the point of this. Maybe the story is like, the road ahead for women to reach parity is so much harder than everyone else. And I don't think we really got that. We got the story of, I was going to say one woman's exceptionalism. I guess there's two. But these women it's not just because they are exceptional, it's because they are magically exceptional. And you don't need that for a wuxia style film either. And that's, again, veer into this. Let's not have like chi, or, maybe have that still, but, let's make it to where some of the people she's fighting are flipping and spinning and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And she wins because she's the best at the flipping and the spinning and the fighting. But in here, It almost feels like the biggest parallel that I had to this was, I know you said the Force. Like I totally got Elsa vibes, because she had to hide this secret power of hers. And it wasn't until she let it out. And again, nothing against Elsa, nothing against like these types of stories in general, but it just felt like, it felt like they were trying to serve so many different stories at the same time that this one fell with kind of a thud when it comes to its like thematic importance.
And I totally get it. It's puzzling to me why they had to do that, unless they're just stuck in this like Star Wars Frozen, mindset that like, if you're going to make a woman, powerful and stand out on her merits, then like it's almost like saying there's got to be a little help somewhere. She's got to have a little edge. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not what we want to do. Obviously, this is a different story. The Mulan story is, yes, women were a totally different class of person in Imperial China, right? And she had to break through all of that crap. This wasn't just showing she's the best soldier. This was like she had to, break through a lot of that stuff. I mean, her life was on the line just for impersonating a man. So that's a pretty powerful statement too. But why they had to bring that cheese stuff in, I just don't know. To me, that's a head scratcher. I will go back though, and one thing they carried over from the movie was the Chub Chaser couple that is in the platoon with her is totally carried over. Like those characters did carry over. There's a scene. There's a sleeping bed, scene where like a guy rolls over and puts his arm around the other guy, and as he reaches over, the other guy smiles, and I'm like, that's interesting for a Disney movie to have in there. I just thought it was interesting that they recognized it enough to keep it in the movie, and it's subtle. It's pretty subtle. I mean, it comes across as kind of a comedic moment, but I also think it's a little warm moment too. And in your mind, you're like, okay, this could never happen in the Imperial Army. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, maybe it did at one time, but it's a little. It runs a little counter to the other tone of the movie.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
What would 90s Bill and Ted have said during that moment?
Oh, yeah. Don't want to know.
Oh, boy. Let's be glad we didn't get that. Will, it looked like you wanted to say something. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think that there was a scene earlier in the film that was also probably the biggest showing of like where this film couldn't figure out its identity, and it was the matchmaker scene. Because when I think about the matchmaker scene in this film, it feels like it's from a completely different movie than the rest of this movie, because it felt like they were trying to very closely recreate some of like the kind of the wacky chaos that happened during the matchmaker scene in the animated movie. Zaniness. Oh, I'm catching the things with my foot. Doesn't really feel like it comes up anywhere else in the film. And they do other, like there's obviously other scenes that draw influence from the film. The bathing scene. Like, oh, I've got to cover, make sure that they don't. I think that was maybe handled well here, all things considered. But the matchmaker scene just really struck me wrong, because it really spoke to the identity crisis that the filmmakers were having, trying to both make something new while also let's not make something too new.
Yeah, agreed. One of the things that just came to mind was a quote that really just stuck with me from when it was first uttered, and it's something that Mulan's father says near the beginning of the movie, where he's showing her his sword from his time in the Imperial Army, and she's like, she's looking at the sword, and she's like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And he says, yes, it's a beautiful tool for terrible work. And that was, I'm like, that's interesting that they put that in a Disney movie, something so, powerful if you think about it. But yeah, I really
was that before or after he told Mulan to know her place? I'm trying to remember.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember too. He probably before, I'm guessing. I don't know. Yeah, to know her place. That was the moment when he was. I think he was frustrated about something at one point. He lashed out. Was that the dinner table scene?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. And it looks like Mary says that was after he had that blow up at her. So the reason I ask is, maybe that was him trying to like reconnect with her a little bit, be vulnerable with her after, having that fight.
Yeah. Good point.
I did like the training like a lot of the stuff that happened in and around camp. The way they, instead of like climbing the pole like they did in the animated one, you have to climb that really tall hill, and you got to see them making a little more progress, and the one dude getting like kicked out for cheating, and that just sort of showed like some of the state. I thought all of that was like a good enough way of doing that. Again, there was still a little bit too much of the like she has to use her magic to get by instead of her skill. Gosh, that is just a trope of so much fantasy, right? Like, I think about like every fighting game that I've ever played, like every like form of like any form of fantasy. Like the unfortunately, the female characters, the only way that they can compete are to be like, they have to be like the sorceresses or the wizards, or they have to use all of that. They just can't often be like just like the ass kicker, and that's such a shame. And I saw that here too. I really wanted to just see her like ass kicking because she is the ass kicker.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Agreed. What do you guys think of the criticism levied at this film about removing the pseudo queer elements?
Except for the one I talked about.
Look, it wasn't. I think that queer people, we've often had to sort of scrap and fight for any form of representation possible, and sometimes even looking for it in subtext that isn't, really there, or wasn't necessarily intended. And I think within the animated movie, I think that you could, maybe make the case of something there, just because the romance between the two characters, I guess, technically starts when he thinks she's a he.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's not the way it was framed. It was supposed to be sort of like a friendship that turned into a romance afterwards. That's the way Disney put it out there. So I'm kind of tired of like, looking for scraps and stuff. And so if I didn't want to see exactly that again, because that would be another LeFou. That would be another, like, me hoping Disney will, please, sir, give me just like give me a little bit of queer, please. And that'll tide me over. Yeah. If they weren't going to go just like full on, like, Mulan, just like pegging like four of her, like, grabbing the strap on and just like pegging four of her, like,
tent mates.
They're tent mates. Then I'm not necessarily concerned about it one way or the other. I want real representation. I don't want scraps.
Yeah, I do give the film credit for at the end. There's a scene where and I forget the character's name that is sweet on her from the very beginning. The other guy in her platoon. She's gotten her accolades and she's heading back home to see her family. And he kind of says, hey, that was awesome. What about me? I kind of like you. And he reaches, and she doesn't really, she acknowledges him. She doesn't diss him, but she's not like, they don't fall into that movie trope of like, oh, it's going to be like true love forever for these two as they kind of ride into the sunset. I give the movie full credit for playing that scene the way it did and making it very, very, undeterministic about, does she like the guy? Does she like guys? No, she's Mulan. She does her thing and she's going to continue to do her thing. And good on the movie for that.
How about you, Brad?
I would say, I know a lot of folks who are very upset that the Mulan character has had some, you mentioned reading into subtext, right? Some folks feel that the Mulan character may have been non-binary or may have been trans, and that those elements were stripped from the character here. Obviously we didn't make the original Disney film. I don't know what the intentions were. I think it's awesome that the community has been able to embrace that character though, and get so much from what they felt was maybe representation, that I could see how, it might be a little bit of a letdown, or I don't know, a big knock against this film for them to see those elements removed. I think Disney's in a hard place though, because, God, am I defending Disney? Jeez. They're trying to make this film. as like an apology for the original film to some degree. I think they made some changes to bring this more in line with the original ballad that Mulan was based on. They filmed a lot of it in China. So I think they're trying to walk the road between cultural norms, right? Between, different peoples. I would just say it's disappointing to me that in 2020, we can't like have a film about an actual non-binary Mulan or a trans Mulan. But maybe that's, the Indie Gay Film Festival version of Mulan we'll get someday. Maybe we're not ready for that yet.
And Disney can't be the ones to make it, not even because of Disney. Disney's going to Disney, but also because it would take rebuilding this story from the ground up, and that's not what they're comfortable with doing. They're kind of like yes-anding their own story instead of deconstructing it. Because in 2020, if you were to pull those exact same elements over, well, someone who has been female and identifies as female and only wears male regalia out of a function as to disguise who she is, that wouldn't be non-binary representation as it is. So you would have to break all of the story elements down and then rebuild it from scratch. Have some elements about her questioning her identity, who she is, maybe experimenting with like her appearance at an earlier stage. There's a way that you could tell that story and you can tell it compellingly, but you can't do it as an adaptation of Disney's Mulan. You have to restructure the story.
I agree. And Mary's comments last year, I'll read this one, the last one. She's kind of sick of that Disney princess shit where, the princess has to fall in love at the end. Blah, she says. But then she says she's all about support of strong women characters, I think is what she's saying. As a woman, she's sick of seeing women have to have a love interest. So if they don't have a love interest, then they are binary or trans. That's what she's asking. She says, I'm super down with that, but I just want one dang movie where she is just a regular, okay woman who doesn't need or want a man. And I kind of get that sense in this movie, right? We've got the presence of the matchmaker. We've got the presence of all these men and women getting, I forget what the word was they used when you're matched up. It wasn't matched, but it was matched.
I think it was matched.
Right?
Yeah. Are you matched? That was like a question, like when you first met somebody, like, what's your name and are you matched? You know what I mean? Like, so that was a big deal. And she kind of did her best as a character, I think, to stay kind of away from that and outside that convention. So again, I think good on Disney for showing that, women, especially this woman character, doesn't have to comply with that convention. So I liked it.
And it gets messy too, because it's hard for, I would say, again, specifically Disney, to try to make a point nuanced about that, because unfortunately, like, sexual attraction and gender identity are two very separate things that, yes, like, they can overlap and interact with one another in very unique and specific ways for every individual. But, sexual attraction is, who you go to bed with. Gender identity is who you go to bed as. And I don't know that I fully trust Disney to delicately tell that story while also trying to deal with like the magic of chi and like, I'm going to do some flips and some kicks. I do agree, though. I think that there has been a trend lately with some of the Disney movies of sort of like steering away from the romantic attraction stuff. And I think in most cases, I think that works rather well for them. I think about something like probably damn near one of the best movies Disney has made. Increasingly, I'm going on a limb and saying maybe ever, but Moana was not a story about love or romance. It was still someone, a girl coming into her own, finding where she fits within her people, finding where she fits within the world at large, being brave. She has special chosen powers to some degree too, but it is her determination, and it's not, the romantic interactions that she has. Even Frozen, and maybe they fumble it with the second one a little bit, but Elsa, her true love is the love of her sister. And so I think that Disney is getting a little bit better at that. Here in Mulan, the romantic elements were so downplayed that, it's sort of left as a question mark. And again, I'm super good with that.
Yeah.
So maybe at least in that element, maybe we're moving in the right direction.
Maybe. We'll have to see what the next generation of Disney thinkers brings us once they're done getting through, remaking their back catalog of animated films. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I have much else to say on this film. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we move into some plugs?
I would just say that people who are disappointed that they're not going to get the dragon, they're not going to get the songs, there are whispers of those things scattered throughout the movie. They're probably not strong enough if you really want that fast talking dragon. But they are at least callbacks in a very subtle way to those things from the first movie.
And if you want 1998's Mulan, just because 2020's Mulan exists doesn't mean that you can't watch 1998's Mulan. In fact, you can watch it right now for free on Disney Plus without having to pay that extra money. So the one thing that makes these, as much as I ultimately dislike these live action remakes, the one thing that makes me feel better about them is they don't erase the films that came before. Really, it's Disney trying to squeeze a little bit of extra money off of a familiar property, but those familiar properties are so profitable for them. 98's Mulan is not going in the vault. Old Lion King, Old Aladdin, those aren't going into the vault. People want to see them, and they're going to keep them available.
Indeed.
Thankfully.
Well, speaking of things that are available and maybe streaming or accessible in some way, let's dish into some plugs as we look to wrap up this week. Will, what do you want to put on people's radar?
I've got kind of a fun one to plug because it's both a movie and an experience. So there is a movie that came out on Netflix over the weekend called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It is a sort of a twisted, cerebral thriller, rom-com, dramedy, I don't know, by Charlie Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman is one of my favorite screenwriters. This is the guy that did Synecdoche, New York, Anomalisa, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Being John Malkovich, Adaptation. He writes the hell out of movies. And this one, he is both the writer and the director of it. It stars Jesse Plemons, who we love here on the show. Jesse Plemons is one of the leads in this. So is another Jesse Buckley, who we last saw in Wild Rose, which was an amazing film from last year. We also have two other pretty compelling supporting leads in this, in Toni Collette, the amazing Toni Collette, and David Thewlis, who play Jesse Plemons' character, mother and father. I love this movie. It is a head scratcher, and it's a kind of a weird, twisted, tangled one, but it's absolutely a lot of fun. And over the weekend, I had a chance to catch up with a couple of friends of the show, Greg and Bruce and Eric from Movie Mainline podcast and the Find Your Scene podcast. They have a lot of plates spinning right now, as well as our friend Andrew from Andrew Watches Movie. And we just got together and did a what the hell was this movie about conversation that's up over on the Movie Mainline podcast show. So it's a lot of fun. This one really made me think. I've been talking to people like in chat messages left and right, just like, hey, what did you think? What did you think? What did you think about that? I love this movie. It's not going to be for everyone, but man, if you like a good Charlie Kaufman film, I highly recommend this one.
Well, you're not done talking about it yet, Will, because chatting with people about it yet, because I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck that movie was really about. So, yeah, it's a strange one. If strange interesting movies are your thing, that's definitely one.
Can I just interrupt this
Strange
breaking
fest?
news?
What?
Yeah.
It's raining, babe.
Oh, yes. No snow,
Yes.
but we're getting rain. Thank
Yes,
it raining,
rain. Thank
not
goodness. We need the rain so bad.
It's raining chi.
Oh my god. Oh,
It's raining
jeez.
chi. Okay.
All right. Jim, what have you got this week?
Well, I know you guys are gonna hate me because I'm gonna plug another documentary, and that's all it seems that I've been
That's all
plugging
right.
lately.
That's okay.
I love
Last night, Brad's been turning it early because he's getting up really early for his work, and I'm down there with the Apple TV thing, and I'm scrolling through Netflix, and a new documentary pops up, and I see the title, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" It's called My Octopus Teacher. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this looks like a Jacques Cousteau kind of thing. I expected it to be like a kid's movie. You know what I mean? My Octopus Teacher with 8 arms and animated and shit. But no, this is I'll read the thing. It's about a filmmaker, Craig Foster, South African filmmaker, who forges an unusual friendship with an actual octopus living in a kelp forest in South Africa, learning as the animal shares kind of mysteries of that world. This thing was amazing. Like, not just a regular like Jacques Cousteau, oh, here's an octopus, look at the octopus go under the rock, blah, blah, blah. But like, this guy was like, basically he went every day to like check out this octopus. And he actually developed this relationship with this creature. And learn, and in filming it, of course, he's a filmmaker. It's beautiful photography, and just fascinating, and also strangely emotional. So check out My Octopus Teacher. It's on Netflix right now. Less than an hour and a half. I can't recommend it more.
You're right, Jim. With that title, that sounds like, when you're at like Target and they have like the animated movies for kids, and then they have like, they have the Disney section, and then right next to it, they have the ones that rushed out at the same time, just to sort of like trick parents into buying them. Like, right next to Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, like around the corner, you'd see my Octopus Teacher. So I'm glad that's not what it was.
It's definitely not that. And I was blown away.
Well, definitely sounds pretty interesting. I have to check that out. Well, I would just like to wish everybody a happy Star Trek Day. Today is the official anniversary of the first airing, the very first Star Trek episode on TV back in 1966. And this leads into my plug because a new trailer for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery dropped on Star Trek Day.
Oh, I still have to see that.
Yeah, and I know that it's something we're looking to forward to quite a bit. The 3rd season premieres in about a month or so, I think. So, Jim, we're gonna have to watch this trailer and catch up on it. But the first couple seasons of Discovery are available on CBS All Access. CBS is also starting to air some of the season 1 and 2 episodes actually on television, not their streaming channel, as they run up toward the premiere of season 3 on CBS All Access. So if you haven't seen Discovery yet and you're like, well, I didn't want to pay for it to watch it, check your TV listings because they may be able to be seen over broadcast. But yeah, check out that trailer. It may whet your appetite a little bit. We're pretty lucky. We got season 3 of Discovery and season 2 of The Mandalorian all coming within 2 weeks of each other. So we're going to have lots of sci-fi goodness to fill up our October and November.
The nerds are having nerd hard-ons right
now. Indeed. Well, it's been a fun show. I will just say that there's one thing we didn't talk about with Mulan. I can't believe I didn't think about it till now, but I want to get it in anyway. Ming-Na Wen, who voiced the original Mulan, also had a cameo in the film. Since we're in plugs, though, I'm not going to say what it was because I don't want to spoil anybody. But if you want your original Mulan and your new Mulan, it happened. So maybe go watch and see. We love you too. Mary Kay Meadows, who says, love you guys. See y'all next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Mary. That would be fantastic. Big shout out and thank you to everyone who joined us, mostly through the conversation tonight. It was great having you along for that ride. And we will definitely see you all next week on the show. Real quick, though, in case you want to chat movies between now and then. Jim, where can folks find you online?
Find me on Facebook under my name, the Jim Pugliafico. It's right here. Or if you want to check out my Twitter handle is at JJP Out West. My initials, JJP Out West.
All right. Will, how about you?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at whatever Cove. I don't post there a lot, and when I do, it's usually shit posting. Look for me on Facebook. It's William Lindis. Just make sure you add the correct one, because otherwise, anyways, you can also find me on Letterboxd. Just look for William Lindis there. It's a place where I review and log every film that I watch. Follow me there. I will follow you back.
All right, excellent. Hamstrack says, by the way, great show. Glad to finally watch the show from the start again. Hammy, so glad you got an opportunity to do that. Wonderful having you with us along for the show this evening. Folks, if you want to chat with me, you can find me on Facebook. I'm Brad Harris. You can also find me on Twitter or Letterboxd at iBradPro up here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Otherwise, you can type it in. We love and adore you all. We will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.